Welcome back friends. Welcome back in another video tutorial for microbiology with Chagnik. So today we will going to talk about a basic on purification of protein. So before going to enter in the main part of the video, I am going to discuss or I am going to tell you a story. So let's get started. Suppose you are a detective and you are going to investigate a case of a murder. Okay. So now when you have entered in the crime scene, you have observed that the person who is murdered has a very deep wound. Okay, and your co-workers already have rescued the murder weapon, and you have observed that the murder weapon is a blunt instrument. Okay, so now you have observed that if the murder weapon is a blunt instrument and the wound is very deep, that means the murderer should be very strong, right? And somehow you have also find out that the murderer should be from that particular apartment where the murder has been performed. So as you have created the first criteria to find out the murderer, that is the murderer should be powerful, so you can easily exclude the person who are not that much powerful to create that much of very deep wound with that particular blunt instrument, right? So you have excluded all those kind of persons, right? Now secondly, you have found a button of shirt which is unique. So now with the help of this you may also exclude another group of person who do not have that kind of shirt, right? So with the help of various type of properties, in this way you may exclude persons who are innocent, right? And at the end you will find out the person who is the guilty, right? So that is how a detective works, by using the clues that he can get and excluding other persons with the help of this clue, right? So the protein purification technique is like this, right? Where we are going to use various type of properties of protein to find out our protein of interest from a mixture of protein. Okay, so for separation of protein with the help of various properties, we have to perform various type of techniques. Some of them we have already discussed and some of them we have not discussed until now. So if we want to separate protein on the basis of size or mass, we have to perform centrifugation or gel filtration, electrophoresis, dialysis, ultrafiltration. Okay, electrophoresis mainly the SDS page, right? If we going to separate protein on the basis of charge, we will going to use ion exchange chromatography, electrophoresis, isoelectric focusing. If we are going to separate protein on the basis of their solubility, we have to change the pH of the medium, or we have to change the ionic strength, or we have to do what? Diverge the dielectric constant. And if we want to specifically find out our protein of interest, we can perform affinity chromatography. Here I want to add another type of process that I have forgotten to write written here, that is the Western blotting, right? Western blotting also find out the protein of interest from a mixture of protein. So that's how with the help of various properties we can find out our protein of interest. Now let's try to notice one thing, that is to perform purification of protein from a mixture of protein. First we have to know a detailed knowledge of our protein of interest, right? Otherwise we cannot do this, right? So here in this diagram you can understand that in initially there are various type of proteins of various shape and size, right? So first of all we will use property number 1. As you can see, this property number 1 are separating the square shaped protein. Now in we have to perform a assay technique to ensure that yes, our protein of interest is present in that particular jar where we have the protein mixture. Okay, and after each step we have to also ensure that our concentration of our protein of interest is increasing. That is also important. Now in the jar, after the removal of square shape protein, we have circle proteins as well as the triangle protein, which is our protein of interest, right? Now we have performed the property number 2 based separation technique to separate all the circle proteins. Then we will again perform a assay to find out whether our protein of interest is present or not, and if it is present, then the concentration of protein is increased or not. Okay, and as now we have only our protein of interest, so now the concentration of the protein will become constant. Okay, so that's how a protein separation or protein purification is done. Now there are two type of properties we have to learn to understand the assay technique. Here we will going to see two things. One is total activity. From the point of view of enzyme, as our protein is also a kind of enzyme, the total activity is the amount of the enzyme present in the solution. Okay, on the other hand, the specific activity is more sensitive term that simply wants to tell us that it is the number of enzyme unit present in per milligram of protein. Okay, and this specific activity will increase with the increase in the purification process. Okay, and at last it become constant when in the jar we have only our protein of interest. So that is the idea of our specific activity. Okay, so I have here also mentioned the two definition of the specific activity and activity, and we have also discussed it in our enzyme videos. So that is the idea of our purification of protein. Now we will going to do a mathematical problem from the purification of protein to understand it more clearly. So I have taken this problem from the CS100 Pathfinder Life Science book. So you may also get this in that particular book. So now let's try to read the question. They are telling us to find out the specific activity and purification level in the table below. So the formula to find out the specific activity is the total activity divided by the total protein. Okay, so as you can see, they have done this. By dividing this and this, they have get this, which is the specific activity. And you can get the purification level by dividing the specific activity with 200, because here the initial specific activity is 200. We have to divide each specific activity with 200 to determine the specific activity, sorry, to determine the purification level. As you can see, by dividing 200 by 200 we have gotten 1. Then by dividing 600 and 200 we have get 3, and then that's how the entire thing is going on, and we have get our purification level. So that is the idea of how you can measure the, or how we can derive the specific activity by dividing the total activity from the total protein and purification level. We can easily find out by dividing all the specific activity from the first specific activity, right? So that is the idea of our purification of protein. So I hope this video will be helpful for you. Thank you.